Number 7. Chicago's German U-boat. The U-505 is a German submarine that was captured by the U.S. Navy during World War II, and it's now on display at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. The U-505 was a Type IXC submarine that was designed for long-range operations in the Atlantic Ocean. It could carry 22 torpedoes and a deck gun. The U-505 had a crew of 59 men and was commanded by Oberlieutenant zur See Harold Lang. On June 4, 1944, the U-505 was spotted by a U.S. Navy task group that was led by Captain Daniel V. Gallery, a Chicago man who ordered an attack on the sub. The U-505 was depth-charged, damaged, and forced to surface. Gallery then decided to board and capture the submarine, which was a risky and unprecedented move. The boarding party managed to secure the submarine and prevent it from sinking or exploding. They also retrieved valuable intelligence material like maps, codebooks, and Enigma machines. The capture of the U-505 was kept secret from the Germans, who thought the sub had sunk. The public was also left in the dark in order to prevent revealing the intelligence information that was obtained from the sub. The U-505 was then towed to Bermuda, where it was studied and stripped of its equipment and documents. After the war, the U-505 was slated for destruction, but Gallery intervened and persuaded the Navy to donate it to the Museum of Science and Industry in his hometown of Chicago. The U-505 arrived in Chicago in 1954 and has been on display ever since as a National War Memorial and a historic artifact. It's also the only remaining Type IXC submarine in the world. Number 6. The Hunt for U-744. The capture of U-744 was one of the most dramatic episodes of the Battle of the Atlantic, the longest continuous military campaign of World War II. The U-744 was a Type VIIC submarine that belonged to the German Kriegsmarine and operated in the Atlantic Ocean from 1943 to 1944. It was commanded by Oberlieutenant zur See Heinz Blischke, a veteran of 11 patrols and 3 sinkings. On March 5, 1944, the U-744 was detected by a British aircraft while returning from a patrol in the North Atlantic. The aircraft dropped depth charges on the submarine, forcing it to dive and evade. The U-744 then encountered a group of Allied ships, including the Canadian corvettes HMCS Chilliwack, HMCS Fennel, and the British destroyer HMS Icarus. The ships then launched a coordinated attack on the U-744, using sonar, radar, and Hedgehog anti-submarine weapons. The U-744 tried to escape by using various tactics like changing course, depth, and speed, as well as releasing decoys and firing torpedoes. However, the Allied ships were persistent and relentless, and they kept pursuing and attacking the U-744 for more than 30 hours. The submarine suffered severe damage from the repeated depth charge explosions, which caused leaks, fires, and electrical failures. The crew also endured physical and psychological stress from the noise, pressure, and lack of oxygen. Finally, on March 6, 1944, the U-744 was forced to surface after a direct hit from a Hedgehog weapon that was fired by the Royal Navy's HMS Bainton. The submarine was surrounded by the Allied ships, which opened fire with their guns. The crew of the U-744 realized that they had no chance of survival and decided to surrender. They raised a white flag and abandoned the submarine. Some of them jumped into the water while others were taken prisoner by Allied sailors. The British boarded the U-744 and took possession of its codebooks, Enigma machine, and other intelligence material. They also found a secret compartment that contained a large amount of gold bars and coins, which were part of a payment from Japan to Germany for war materials. The capture of the U-744 was a significant victory for the Allies, as it provided valuable information on German submarine operations and codes. And in the end, the U-744 was sunk by a British torpedo during some target practice. Number 5. The capture of the U-110. The capture of the U-110 was a remarkable event in World War II, as it gave the British access to the secret Enigma machine and code books that were used by the German Navy. The Enigma machine was a device that encrypted and decrypted messages using a complex system of rotors and wires. The Germans believed that their code was unbreakable and used it to communicate with their ships and submarines. On May 9, 1941, U-110, a Type IXB U-boat commanded by Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp, was part of a wolf pack that attacked a British convoy in the Atlantic, just south of Iceland. U-110 fired 2 torpedoes at a merchant ship, but missed. The British escorts then detected the U-110 and launched depth charges that damaged the submarine and forced it to surface. Afterward, Lemp ordered his crew to abandon ship, thinking that the U-boat was sinking. He also tried to scuttle the boat by opening the valves in the ship's hull, called the seacocks, to allow some water into parts of the ship, but he failed to do so completely. And as the Germans were leaving the boat, a British destroyer called the HMS Bulldog approached and prepared to ram U-110. However, at the last moment, the Bulldog's captain saw that the U-boat was deserted and veered away. He then sent a boarding party to seize the U-110 before it sank. The British sailors managed to enter the U-boat and found the Enigma machine and codebooks still intact, so they quickly removed them and returned to their ship, leaving the U-110 to sink the next day. The capture of the U-110 was kept secret for 7 months, even from President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Enigma machine and codebooks were taken to Bletchley Park, where a team of cryptographers led by Alan Turing worked on breaking the naval code. Their success gave the Allies a crucial advantage in the Battle of the Atlantic, as they could read the German messages and track their movements. The capture of the U-110 was one of the most important intelligence coups of the war. Number 4. Capture of the U995. The U995 was a German sub that was used by the German Kriegsmarine during World War II. It's one of the few surviving U-boats that can be visited today as a museum ship. U995 is a Type VIIC/41 U-boat, which was an improved version of the most common U-boat type, the Type VIIC. The U995 had a displacement of 759 tons when surfaced and 860 tons when submerged. It was powered by 2 diesel engines and 2 electric motors and could reach speeds of up to 17.7 knots on the surface and 7.6 knots underwater. It was armed with 5 torpedo tubes, 14 torpedoes, and 3 anti-aircraft guns. It also had a crew of between 44 and 60 men. U995 was launched on July 22, 1943, and it was commissioned that same year on September 16th, with Oberleutnant Walter Kontop as the commander. It underwent training until May of 1944, and then joined the 13th Flotilla for active service in the Atlantic and the Arctic. U995 participated in 5 wolf packs, which were groups of U-boats that coordinated their attacks on Allied convoys. U995 sank 3 merchant ships, 1 auxiliary warship, and 1 patrol boat. At the end of the war, on May 9, 1945, U995 surrendered to the British at Trondheim, Norway. It wasn't transferred to the UK, but remained in Norway until October of 1948, when it was given to the Norwegian Navy. It was renamed the Kora and served as a training submarine until 1965. It was then sold to Germany for 1 Deutschmark and became a museum ship at the Labo Naval Memorial near Kiel in October 1971. U995 is now a popular tourist attraction that allows visitors to see the interior and exterior of a historic U-boat. What's a good name for a naval submarine? Let us know what you come up with down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Now let's move on to number 3, the Vesikko. Vesikko is a historic submarine that served in the Finnish Navy during World War II. But now it's just a museum ship in Somaliina, a sea fortress and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Helsinki, Finland. Vesikko was built in 1933 in the Finnish city of Turku. as a prototype for the German Type II submarines. It was ordered by a Dutch engineering company that was a front for the German Navy, which was banned from building submarines after World War I. Vesico was one of the first submarines to have a streamlined hull and a diesel-electric propulsion system. It had a displacement of 254 short tons when surfaced and 303 short tons when submerged. It could carry 5 torpedoes and had a .79-inch anti-aircraft gun and a .5-inch machine gun. It also had a crew of 16 men and could dive to a depth of 492 feet. Vesico was purchased by the Finnish Navy in 1936 and was renamed from its yard number CV707 to Vesico, which means mink in Finnish. It was one of the 5 submarines that Finland had during World War II, along with the 3 larger Vitahinen-class boats and a small Sauko sub. Vesico participated in the Winter War and the continuation war against the Soviet Union, performing convoy escort, patrol, and reconnaissance missions in the Gulf of Finland. Its only confirmed sinking, however, was the Soviet merchant ship Vyborg on July 3, 1941. After the war, Finland was forbidden from having submarines by the Paris Peace Treaty of 1947. All the Finnish submarines were scrapped except for the Vesico, which was preserved as a memorial for the submarine service. It was restored to its original condition and was subsequently opened to the public as a museum ship in 1973. Number 2, the U-234. In the intriguing tale of the U-234, we find a German submarine entangled in a secret mission during 1945. This vessel was tasked with transporting a rather potent cargo, 1,235 pounds of uranium oxide, boasting an impressive 77% purity. This uranium stash was potentially sufficient for the creation of 2 atomic bombs, which were intended for Japan's atomic bomb program. And alongside this radioactive load, the submarine also carried an arsenal of advanced weaponry, including jet engines, radar equipment, and torpedoes. U-234 belonged to the Type XB U-boat family, originally designed for mine-laying duties. What set it apart, though, was its unique radar setup, sporting both a transmitter and a detection antenna. Aboard this clandestine vessel were 52 crew members and an additional 10 passengers, including 2 Japanese naval officers. Setting sail from Kiel on April 16, 1945, U-234 embarked on a 16-day underwater journey, surfacing briefly for only 2 hours each night, camouflaged by stormy cover. As Germany's Reich was in its final throes of collapse, U-234 received an abrupt directive from Admiral Dönitz, the new head of state, ordering all U-boats to surface and surrender. Then, in a twist of fate, the crew opted to surrender to the United States rather than continuing their mission for Japan, fearing they'd face war crimes charges if captured by the Allies. On May 14, 1945, the USS Sutton, a destroyer escort, intercepted the U-234, which surrendered without putting up resistance. The submarine was then escorted to the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, where its precious cargo was seized and its crew was held as prisoners of war. U-234's surrender was shrouded in secrecy for many years. The fate of its uranium cargo became a subject of spirited debate and conjecture among historians. Some claim that the uranium found its way into the Manhattan Project, contributing to the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, others argue that the uranium's quality and quantity may not have been suited for the American nuclear program. But regardless, to this day, the destiny of U-234's uranium remains an unsolved puzzle. And at number 1, HMAS Enlo. HMAS Enlo is a former submarine of the Royal Australian Navy that's now a museum ship at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. Enlo was one of 6 Oberon-class submarines that served in the Royal Australian Navy from 1969 to 1999. The Oberon class was a British design that was adapted for Australian conditions and requirements. Onslow was named after the town of Onslow in Western Australia and Sir Alexander Onslow, a former Chief Justice of Western Australia. Onslow had a displacement of 2,030 short tons when surfaced and 2,410 short tons when submerged. It was powered by 2 diesel generators and 2 electric motors that drove 2 propellers. It could reach a speed of over 15 knots when submerged and could descend to a depth of over 620 feet. It had 6 torpedo tubes in the bow and could carry 20 torpedoes or missiles, including the anti-ship Harpoon missile. The vessel also had a crew of 68 men. During the Onslow's operational history, it played a crucial role in enhancing Australia's submarine capabilities. Onslow conducted numerous patrols and exercises in the waters of the Pacific and Indian Oceans, contributing to the country's national security and regional stability. The submarine was also involved in training and joint exercises with allied nations, solidifying its reputation as a vital asset in the Australian Navy's fleet. Onslow was known for its stealth and surprise, as it successfully sank several enemy ships in simulated battles, including the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson in 1998. Onslow was then decommissioned in March of 1999 and was transferred to the Australian National Maritime Museum in April of that same year. It's now preserved as a museum ship and is open to the public. Today, visitors can enter the submarine and see the living and working spaces of the submariners, as well as the engines, torpedoes, and other equipment. Do you think submarines are more useful in wars than surface ships are? Why or why not? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.